Good afternoon. Dear Senator Rahman, Senator Needleman, Senator Fazio, Representative Converse DeGraw, Representative Chafee, Representative Zullo, and other members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Tim Ackert, and I represent the 8th District, which includes Fulton, Columbia, Coventry, Lebanon, and Tolland this year. Thank you for your opportunity to appear before you today to speak in strong support of the following bills on a public hearing agenda today. Raise Bill, House Bill 6651, an act requiring the Office of Policy and Management to establish a working group to study the impact of unclaimed or abandoned real property on municipalities. Firsthand, I had an issue. I had a bill similar to this that was presented to you, and this looks like the same language. And so in my community, I had a constituent call. There was unclaimed property next to his property that he was trying to take care of. And I think it's one of the issues that we come up with. You know, what impact does an unclaimed property or abandoned property may have an impact on your property? Well, unfortunately, what happened was on this property, a tree fell and hit his house and did severe damage to his house. It was near the lake area in Coventry. He obviously did his due diligence to look and to see whose property it was, and come to find out it's just blank, literally blank on the sheet. There's no name, no anything. It's just, and it was an association property decades ago that just was, you'd think it was given to the municipality, but in reality, if the municipality doesn't want the property, they're not going to take it. So it just became, unused property. The town, when they did some road work, they had some drainage that they were able to drain into that property, because it, if you drain that water into maybe somebody that owned property, we create a problem. So they were able to, take some water and bring it to that property. Well, tree fell, took out a good portion of his house, had to obviously rebuild his home, and under insurance. Literally a year later, a second tree. So you're talking about bad luck, fell and hit his house again. And it's in a state now of him rebuilding. He doesn't know what to do, because what do you do? And obviously in our case in the state of Connecticut, you can contact your insurance company, but you call the insurance company again and you say, hey, you're not going to believe this, but a tree from the unclaimed property next to me fell on my home. So there's could be variable issues that come up with unclaimed property. Blight, for one, where if nobody owns the property and someone's just dumping on it, it's it's in your community, or other issues like this, trees, runoff, whatever it may be. So, I said, when I started to look in my community alone, how many pieces of property had no ownership, I was shocked. You think about land claims back in the early days of our country, where people would run out and claim land. You think, how come nobody owns this property? And for probably reasons of value. So I think a working group on this would be a good movement in the right direction to see, is there, I know the state did it under the Malloy administration on state property when he took off and said, do we even need this property? Is there a value to something else? What can we do with it? So I think that working group, I'm in full support of that. And then the second one, listen, SB 1003, an act establishing a municipal tree removal grant program. I'd like to thank the committee for raising this bill. The damage caused by the emerald ash borers and the Limacharia dispar, or it's actually called the spongy moth, better known as a gypsy moth to us, throughout Eastern Connecticut, has created a substantial damage to our trees in our community. And I know right now in the town of Coventry, my municipal leader had mentioned that they spend approximately $100,000 a year, small town of Coventry, 12,400 people, on tree removal, and they're about 3,000 trees behind. So just think about that in terms of an impact on a municipality, that they have to clear out that many trees because of the tree damage. So I think, listen, do I understand it's a budgetary issue? Absolutely. But whose budgetary issue? It's, if you think about in the damage, when those trees, the emerald ash conveniently falls straight down, the limbs fall and come straight down rather than derooting a tree. So you do get a lot of damage from just the branches, but when I look at my small town of Coventry, I can imagine it's very similar in many tree communities. So with that, I'm open to any questions.
Representative Zullo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the explanation. Just to follow up on the working group to study impact of unclaimed property, have you also talked to your assessor or any assessors about the effect? Because I hadn't thought of some of the things you had thought of. My initial thought was, how are these properties distorting people's grand lists? Because you have these properties and every year you're sending out these tax bills. And believe it or not, in East Haven, we actually had a situation where we were sending out the tax bills and then we're coming back to the town to address care of town of East Haven because we didn't know who owned the properties. And so they were inflating our grand list and inflating our potential tax projection numbers, which was a problem. So I was curious if you talked to your assessor about that too.
I had not, because if in this case here, it's a great point, right? Because one of the things you'd like to do with this property is have it be taxable, right? Share the wealth of, that, but if there's no owner for it, so there is no tax. And that's what essentially happened, I think, Representative, is that, the Lake Association said we're disbanding and our properties are now unowned, literally unowned. So taxes went to nobody because there was no person to pay that. In that case, it was an association. So there is no billable goods essentially in this case. And so these properties have value to, in some manner. I'm not sure if they're buildable properties or it could be recreational properties in the case that I'm thinking of, but I'm just thinking about it overall in a concept that we look at, parcels of land. Could it be, part of environmentally sound, like it's in terms of your, I can't think of the name of the property that you would use for conservation. Conservation properties, but it would be great if these were the neighbor. The problem is I actually asked the individual, so why don't you just ask for the property? He says, because look at what's wrong. The trees are falling and it has a drainage issue. So why would I want that property? And why would I want to be taxed on something that nobody owns? I don't have a concern that can be built on. So I think that's why it's a type of, survey, and maybe the town's great point. Maybe the assessors could weigh in at each community. How many parcels are out there that are unclaimed? And is there any of them that are valuable that maybe could be put up for sale or acquisition?
I appreciate the extra perspective and thank you for the indulgence, Madam Chair.
I just have one quick question. In terms of the working group, I see that it's going to be OPM, DECD, DRS, and community stakeholders. Would you say that the assessors might be part of those community stakeholders? And then also, I guess what I'm trying to get at is how much of this would end up being on the towns to sort of collect all this information? And is that, we're not trying to put too much on our towns and their limited resources as it stands?
That's a great question, Representative. I think that it would probably be from the assessor's office, to be quite honest, right? Because that's where all the records are in terms of what's taxed and not taxed. So I think that would be it. And yes, could it be though that they research it themselves if they don't already have the information? They could already have the information to some level and just say, okay, these are the 17 parcels in Coventry. Are any of them billable? Are there any of them that could be put out for claiming? Because even if somebody just claimed it for free, then we were taxed on the value of it. It would be a benefit to the community. So I think
I don't disagree with that. We have that same situation in our district, so I get it. Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions at this time, thanks so much for your testimony and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You as well.
Up next.